Rosie, weigh in on all this cutting that is going on. I've gotten a few requests over the past week or so to get back to a little bit of economics and society here, and particularly what's going on with this almost radical drive to cut costs in the federal government. But the question is, in the long run, even in the intermediate run, is it really going to make a difference? This is a very important topic and one you want to listen to, because there's things that are moving out there in the financial world. And to just sit back and think to yourself, oh, I'll just engage in social media drama and just have a good time doing this or that and just disregard things like that, leaves you totally unprepared for the things that are likely coming down the pike. Let's get into it today. And a very good morning to all of you. And it finally feels a little bit like spring in the air here. And yes, today we're going to delve back into a economic situation here. It's going to have an effect on everybody. And well, let me tell you, number one, if you're not subscribed, subscribe and hit that bell for all notification. Well, like I say, these are things that have been spot on, particularly for the 2 years that I've been really beating the drum, actually 3 years, about gold and particularly silver. So you want to be a part of that and really understand what the realities are and what the consequences are and what the likelihood of success is as we forge ahead into the first year of the Trump administration. So subscribe and hit that bell for all notifications. It's interesting here. In my lifetime, I've heard Ronald Reagan talk about way back in 1964, we need to cut the size of government. 1981, the scariest words, the scariest sentence in the English language: I'm here from the federal government to help. Right? I'm here from the federal government and I'm here to help. But in all of that, we never had this single-minded and almost maniacal drive to just radically cut costs here of the federal government. And a couple issues spring out of one we're not going to talk about today is the demoralizing effect this obviously has across federal workers. This is a very serious concern, and I don't know at this point in time if federal judges will rule, slow down, there's more at stake here, or whether there's clear executive authority to run your branch of government as you see fit. People have the idea that different branches of government are allowed to intersect with other branches of government. Three co-equal branches of government. The legislature, which makes laws and controls the purse strings of the nation. That's their function, right? The judicial, which is to interpret those laws and, well, impose justice equally for all in society and rule on what may be unconstitutional in points of law, or also in things like executive orders. Finally, we have the executive branch of government. Well, it's just like a corporation. There is the chairman and the CEO, and his job is to run the United States from a governmental point of view. Defense, Justice Department, right, for investigations, FBI, things like that. The State Department, our face overseas. Treasury Department, our money operations. Right? Defense, Health and Human Services, Social Security, and things like that. So there's Veterans Affairs. There's a lot of different departments that are all within the scope of the administrative branch or the executive branch of the United States government. So that gives the president a tremendous amount of power. And well, on one hand, you can say this is frightening because we've never seen it before. And on the other hand, people say this is awesome because we're finally seeing the full exercise of power of the executive branch of the United States, and basically catch me if you can, right? We're going to cut costs. Well, let's get down to the reality of what's going on now. The president is certainly has it in his mind, and a lot of people, economists, Jamie Dimon, Ray Dalio, all these pundits from top to bottom, we all know that we have a serious situation with the amount of debt that's in the world today, particularly the United States and among the consumers. But today we're going to focus on federal debt. And this debt has accumulated to such a point that now the amount of money that is being spent on servicing the debt, the interest on the debt, is exceeding the Department of Defense and becoming a huge budget item. And it's starting to really finally get the attention. We've been beating the drum on this for years, that there's going to come a point where this debt and these deficits are going to, and this interest on the debt is going to become a huge monster that is going to be consuming more and more of the resources of the United States, to such an extent that we can no longer have a balanced budget. We can no longer spend exactly what we take in, or maybe a little less. We now have to go have tremendous borrowings and tremendous deficits year after year, to the tune that this year, in the first 4 months, we're already $800 billion. $800 billion deficit in just the first 4 months of the fiscal year, projecting to be about $2 trillion deficit. Now, we talked about that $2 trillion. That's a lot of money, okay? That is a lot of money. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. And when that money is injected into the economy that doesn't have a proportional intake on the revenue side, we have, voila, we have inflation. Because we have much more purchasing power in borrowed money that's going out in there into the markets, buying things and distributing that to people. We've done videos on how you're competing against the government when you go to secure housing and rent an apartment and things like that. You're competing with the $180 billion that the government, federal government, is spending on housing every year. Well, those people get it subsidized, a lot of those people, and you're the one that's out there paying $2,000, $2,100, $2,800 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. And it pushes up the price of housing and things like that, not to mention food, right? Through our food programs with tens of billions of dollars of food stamps, EBTs, and things like that. So you see the situation, you wonder, like, well, why are things just continuously going expensive? Because you're getting so expensive because you have uncontrolled purchasing, okay? There's no one to slap on the hand and say, okay, we can only give you 3 eggs this week, and no more no more London broil for anybody, right? It's gonna be ground beef. And then with that purchasing power that these people have that was not equivalently earned through working and productivity, right, it drives up the price of things. But let's get back to the main event today, because we've covered a lot of that before. We're at the point now we have DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and I think it shocked people how radically it's going in and cutting things. And like I said, there could be a demoralizing effect. And I guess they'll squeeze until the pip squeak, or whatever doesn't get done in government, right? Whatever's important now, we'll put somebody back in that function. But we do risk also losing a lot of intellectual knowledge, a knowledge base of what's going on within the federal. So there's definitely a downside to radical cutting. But here is where the rubber meets the road today. Let's say that Elon Musk and Trump have a goal of cutting $1 trillion from the annual spending of the United States, right? You take that down, which actually means if you take that down and a budget deficit is $2 trillion and a huge chunk of that begins to be interest on the debt. Well, the interest on the debt is compounding every year at a higher interest rate as 10-year interest rates creep higher. So in effect, you're taking you're cutting out little parts of it. You have holes in the boat, and you're plugging one or two of the 200 holes on the boat. And when you get that hole filled, 10 other holes fill. In other words, debt is compounding at such a ferocious rate today that even if you cut federal spending totally radically, even $2 trillion for a year, you're still going to be in a point where you're having deficit. And the other side of the coin is there's no slowing down that interest on the debt. The debt clock keeps ticking right along, right? So the point is, we now come to a situation where I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people at the end of it all may be laid off. People that, well, if you live in Washington, D.C. and you work in Washington, D.C., you have a ripple effect for Maryland and Virginia, right? Because there's fancy homes in Bethesda. You have Silver Spring and Crystal City, Alexandria, Virginia, Springfield, Virginia, right? All these people that are well paid are living there, and now they suddenly don't have jobs. And a lot of these people, yes, they'll get paid through September or whatever. But then, right, we have the filings for unemployment, and well, here comes the other side of the equation. With this tremendously diminished purchasing capacity of people spending money on housing, groceries, vacations, automobiles, educations, and things like that, we suddenly have a big dampening effect. Whereas the money being spent is much less, and the ripple effect can be dramatic. To the point where what you've tried to cut on one side now has to be paid out on the other in federal benefits to people that are laid off. Look, if you think you're going to leave the Department of Education, let's say the average person down there federally is making $100,000 a year. You know, some people make $200,000, $300,000. Some may only make $80,000, maybe $60,000 a year. But on average, let's say you make $100,000 a year and you get the boot from the Department of Education. How hard do you think as a 49, 59, even 38-year-old, 48-year-old, how intensely difficult do you think it's going to be to find a job that has an equivalent amount of pay with the skill set that you bring to the table? It's going to be very difficult. So what this is really doing is eviscerating a small part of the once secure middle class and lower upper class, and just causing that to totally implode, right? So you can see that there's a lot of moving parts on the board. And the one truth teller in it all is the price of gold. And as I'm recording this today, we're about $50 short of $3,000 an ounce. And I think gold is the smartest guy in the room, as we used to say at the bank. Who's the smartest guy in the room? Well, the guy that keeps his mouth shut, right? In the corner, because he doesn't piss the boss off, right? Just stay low key, right? Oh, were you in the meeting today? I didn't see you. Yeah, I was absorbing everything you said, man. 100% spot on good. At least somebody got it. Gold is the truth teller. Gold is the one that sits there and says, I've got people fooled a lot because they think the price of gold is going up and down. They think the price of gold moves. No. Think of the price of gold as being hammered to the wall. It doesn't move. Everything else in the world moves in relation to it. You know what gold is anticipating? It's anticipating probably a time when the only potential choice that's going to make sense and be politically feasible in what's truly a faltering democracy is to begin monetizing the debt. That is just creating dollars from the U.S. Treasury and then shipping them over to the Federal Reserve and things to pay the interest on the debt, which will have a real monetizing effect and create like a Venezuela and Argentina situation. It's unpalatable. And some people say, I don't want to hear about this stuff, right? Well, smart people want to hear about it. Other people want to bury their head in the sand and say, well, all will be well. We got 250 years on it. You know, it'll all work out in the end. Right? That assumes civilizations through history endured forever. I don't know. I'm not speaking Greek. Right? Okay, they didn't make it. The great Greek civilization of the great thinkers, Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, right? Or the great Roman empires and the huge. I'm not speaking Latin, right? A lot of us in the world don't speak English. The great English empire. Things change over time. Nothing is carved in stone. And this is the real takeaway that you need to be aware of. So a lot of people say, hey, that's great, right? But, tell us what to do about it. Well, therein lies a really huge problem because, well, options are extraordinarily limited here. And, well, it's either cut here and then the balloon bulges this way, spend here and then the balloon bulges this way. You know, we've run out of really feasible options, but there'll be a feel-good effect for people for cutting cost. But at the end of the day, against $2 trillion deficits, a cutting of $1 trillion of spending, well, guess what? You're still in the hole. You're up a little higher. Instead of being 300 feet down, you're 280 feet down, but you're still down in the hole. Yeah, there'll probably be a radical reordering of the world. It may be peaceful, it may not. In the coming, it may not be in my lifetime. But I know this for sure. In a society, it's basically become one of the most, if not most, Marxists in the history world that gives everybody what they want. Right? Please everybody because everybody has a vote out there. There comes a time when it just puts such a drag on Treasury and resources that the whole shebang just falls apart. Right? It's untenable anymore. And one of the greats, de Tocqueville, when he came to the United States and observed early democracies, said this is going to be wonderful, but there's going to come a day that democracy is going to be in peril because people will learn how to vote themselves treats from the Treasury. And that's exactly what we've done the last 60 years. We've burdened this poor old mule with so many rocks in the baskets on its back, climbing up a mountain like this, right? 250 years old, and hoping this sucker doesn't fall off the mountain. How do you like that imagery, guys? Stay awake. Stay subscribed. Understand what's really going on. You know, all talk about cutting and everything. Interest rates are still moving their way upward. What does that tell you? Hey, thumbs up or appreciate it. Once again, subscribe and hit that bell for all notifications. What a pleasure to be here with, well, people that care and are intellectually interested in what's going on. Forewarned is forearmed, and the more you know, the more ahead of the curve that you can be. All right, thumbs up or appreciated. Thanks, everybody.